abrupt intro ending. Welcome, Johncast Podcast, episode 75. You know, we're getting close to the 1-year anniversary of this podcast. Believe it or not, Mike Lucas was my very first guest on October 4th of 2021. So maybe we should celebrate by bringing in Lukey next week. I don't know. Maybe we will. Maybe this week. I don't know. I don't know when it's going to happen, but maybe we'll get Mike Lucas on again. I haven't contacted him yet. But anyway, welcome into the Johncast Podcast, episode number 75, brought to you by me and Julio in Fitchburg. Me and Julio has daily drink specials, including Tuesdays and Thursdays with their $5 margaritas. It is a fantastic deal at Me and Julio. They've got the Badger and Packer game day specials as well, including Coors Lights for just $3. So go check out a game at Me and Julio. Open 7 days a week. Me and Julio on Fish Hatchery Road. I was just there the other day, and we're going to be giving away some Me and Julio gift cards soon. So stay tuned to this podcast, and I'll let you know how you can win some of those. Also brought to you by Ian's Pizza in Madison, hiring delivery drivers at a guaranteed rate of $20 per hour. That is fantastic. Ian's Pizza also has great pizza, too. If you love the mac and cheese pizza, it's a staple, but they're always trying new varieties, different recipes, different combinations to put on their pizza. 3 locations in Madison. If you're in Milwaukee, go check out Ian's Pizza, too. I believe they have 3 locations as well. They're also in Denver and Seattle. So check out Ian's Pizza. JohnCastPodcast.com. Sign up for the newsletter. I'll let you know when we're giving away those Me and Julio gift cards. Plus, I've got some college football tickets we're going to be giving away here soon as well. So Johncast Podcast, sign up for the newsletter, rate and review, do all those good things. Well, today's guest is a longtime sports reporter in Madison, Wisconsin. Spent 39 years on the air between a couple of different television stations, and recently retired in late 2021. You can find him, though, on select BTN broadcasts as a broadcaster, whether on the sidelines or behind the mic, calling the action. I'd like to welcome Jay Wilson to the Johncast Podcast. What's going on, Jay? How are you?
I'm well, John. It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, long time no talk. So what's keeping you busy these days?
Well, the first thing is 3 grandchildren. They always need some sort of care because if you're in daycare, your room gets shut down when somebody has COVID. So we have 2 in Milwaukee, one here in Madison. So we're my wife and I are doing a lot of grandson and granddaughter watching. I work at Pleasant View Golf Course as a starter and a range ball picker. Range ball picking is my favorite job I've ever had in my entire life. Yes, even more fun than broadcasting because you pick up the balls with the machine, you dump them into baskets, you take them to the washer, you wash the balls, you dump them into the dispenser, then you do the whole thing over again, and you're listening to music the whole time. Nobody bothers you. It's great. So I highly recommend. Awesome. Yeah, I highly recommend range ball picking. The running joke for the last 25 years, when I got frustrated with television, I always said, someday I'm going to just go pick range balls at a golf course. and now I do it. And then, as you mentioned, some of the broadcasting ventures, I still do some high school tournament broadcasts on Valley, and that's coming up here in a little bit, volleyball and football. So retired, yes. Inactive, no.
No. I love that. I love the range ball. So you fulfilled a lifelong dream that you've been talking about for a while. I'm just going to go pick range balls. Yeah. And do you ever have people, do you ever have people try to hit at you? Because that's the number one thing I do when I see someone on the driving range, like in that cart.
Absolutely. And what if a 7-year-old is up on the deck hitting, I will drive the picker to within like 15 feet of the 7-year-old and say, okay, you get 1 free shot. And what happens is they get so excited, they'll swing so hard, they'll either hit it over the top or they'll hit the top of the ball and it'll skim underneath the cart. But I'll give them another shot and let them do it till they hit it. But yeah, no, that's one of the great joys of the game of golf is trying to hit the cart. No question. No matter what your age is.
No matter what your age is, I still do it. I'm in my 40s. So I think that's so nice of you in a way. Like that's so cool that you would allow like little kids to do that, because that's what everybody is trying to do. So you did say you're going to be doing some volleyball. What's the volleyball match you're going to be doing for BTN Plus?
Well, it's going to be in Nebraska at Michigan. It's going to be Friday, October 8th. Okay. Like I say, I just get a call once in a while. It's going to be on Big Ten Plus, their streaming service. And the way it works is that the match is in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but I drive to Waunakee, Wisconsin, and go into a studio with a bunch of monitors and do play-by-play there. And at the end of the night, I say, "Good night from Ann Arbor," and I drive 20 minutes home. It's a pretty good deal.
Fastest trip from Ann Arbor ever. So,
Right.
I mean, you've done volleyball matches for quite a long time. Have you noticed a change of where the sport is headed now to when perhaps you first got behind the mic and called the volleyball match?
Yeah. In fact, if truth be told, I was the first volleyball announcer on BTN. I wasn't their only volleyball announcer, but this was 2008 when BTN first started, ground floor. And whenever a Badger volleyball match was on BTN back in those days, I was the guy. I was very fortunate to do that. It was a very high level of volleyball even then, but now it's astronomical level. I mean, you watch a match, you can't take your eyes off it because of the athletic ability and what these players can do. And from a media standpoint, if back in the day, back in the late 2000s, there weren't a lot of volleyball matches on BTN, for example. And I think you watch this year's in particular, there are many, many more featured volleyball matches. And I think that's a result of what coaches like Kelly Sheffield did in the offseason to highlight the fact that volleyball is a popular sport and deserves more coverage, deserves more exposure. And I think even if it's pick your teams, if it's Illinois, Indiana, you might watch some of it. If it's Penn State, Wisconsin, you're really going to watch some of it. And I think, especially in Madison and Wisconsin, the Badger success has certainly generated a lot more of that interest than many places.
And you could see as much with the 16,833 fans who came to the Kohl Center to watch Wisconsin versus Florida. I was about to say Nebraska versus Florida. But it's kind of interesting too, because now those two programs are trying to compete with each other, not on the volleyball court, but which is like packing the stands. Because I heard the Nebraska AD recently said something like, "Well, we're going to have to find a bigger venue. We're going to have to beat that record because we're Nebraska, and we're going." And I know, Kelly would be like, "Okay, bring it. We'll go to Fiserv Forum. We'll go somewhere else. Heck, they might be playing at Lambeau Field someday. Who knows?" Yeah,
and the remarkable thing is they can probably accomplish it. I mean, they're pushing 17,000 now. I mean, like you say, I mean, is an outdoor volleyball match a possibility? Well, they've done outdoor basketball games, and it's the same kind of thing. I mean, perhaps Miller Park or American Family Field. My wife works at American Family, and I'm still calling it Miller Park. But I mean, if the basketball team can play at AmFam Field, why not the volleyball?
That's exactly what I was going to say. They're playing basketball games there in November. So right. Maybe that's a possibility as well. So you're almost a year, right? Almost a year from your last sportscast in the area after 39 years. It's like you said, it seems like you're keeping busy, but do you ever say like, man, I kind of wish I'd go into work and do a sportscast, or is that no? I love how you're
not one bit.
No.
And
okay.
That's when I knew it was time to leave that part of my broadcasting career. It was a unbelievably enjoyable, spectacular, fortunate run I had for almost 4 decades. But the last year and a half or so, I would come home for a year and a half every night after the 10 o'clock show and say to my wife, "Can I quit tomorrow?" And she said no. And she said no. And one Tuesday, I said, "Can I quit tomorrow?" She said yes. And I walked into the office that Wednesday and quit.
Wow.
Or announced that I was going to quit, I should say.
Yeah.
It was just time. Again, I have so many great memories and so many great situations I was put in because the Badgers and Packers and Brewers were so successful like they've never been before in the history. When I was growing up in Wisconsin Rapids in the 70s, Badger football stunk. I mean, they didn't win anything. And the same with the basketball team. But their success is almost justified the job of a local TV sports reporter because that was the big story and that needed coverage, and that needed a face, and that needed a front. And so, when they started going to Rose Bowls and Final Fours, I mean, I was the right guy, right place, right time kind of thing. And I was very fortunate.
So why would you come home after the 10 o'clock sportscast and think to yourself that you don't want to do it anymore? What was it about the job that wasn't satisfying?
The hours, my wife worked early, I worked late, which was great growing in the earlier days, raising kids, because we had coverage for most of the day for our young children. But local TV news has changed. The business is much different now than it was. When I was with Channel 3, I stumbled upon they used to have promo pictures of the sports team that they'd hand out at county fairs or whatever. And there were 5 faces on it. They had 5 full-time local TV sports reporters. I mean, imagine how many stories you can do and how much coverage you can have.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
everything.
Yeah. You look at the landscape in Madison now, there's 2 per station. And, one of my calling cards was high school sports, covering high school sports. Well, you just can't do it with 2. You're very limited. There's an emphasis on Friday night high school football, but you get help from news photographers and other people around the station. But that's the one night that it does. And so seeing that coming was a frustration. And just the whole feel of what local TV news is different. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's different. And maybe I look back at the golden years and say, boy, I wish things were like they were 20 years ago. Well, they're not. And, I guess I haven't changed much, and the business has changed. And so that certainly led to it.
No, that makes sense, especially the dwindling staffs. And you think and listen, obviously newspaper, radio, television isn't immune to the changes in technology and the way people consume information. So I understand this, but it seems like in a way, perhaps television could be a little bit more immune to that, because if you had 5 people, I mean, your sports coverage would be the best in the city. And there's still people that want the best. This is where they get their sports coverage. You know what I mean?
I couldn't agree more. And I understand economics. I understand revenues and expenses. But another thing I see on the horizon of local TV news and sports is that the ticket to survival, as you suggested, is to be local, to not be CNN or not be some regional broadcast. Local's where it hits home. And I think those are investments, and there are good returns on those investments. And again, maybe I look back at the golden years, or longingly, and I see where there was the commitment to local, the big commitment to local, and I don't see it as much anymore. And I still think that would work. I still think that's the answer for really the survival of local television.
I agree 1,000%, because the people in this city, in this community, in this area, in this county, I mean, yes, you're going to get coverage in different types of outlets online and, print or whatever, but this is only one, when you turn on everybody goes home and turns on a TV still, some of us may have our phones while we're doing it, but it's still a lot of people turning on televisions at night, and they want their local coverage. And I agree with you. I think it could still be successful. Maybe not at the 5-person staff, but
right.
Perhaps.
Well, and another thing that led to my concerns about the future is that, when I came on with a 10 o'clock sports report, most everybody kind of knew what it was already. I mean, they're looking at their phone constantly. And people's schedules often don't allow them to be sitting in front of a television set at 6 or 10 regularly, constantly. Like in the olden days, we kind of cleared our schedule to watch the 6 and 10 newscast, but I don't know that that's the case anymore.
I mean, you could even have I don't know if maybe you do this already, like extended sportscasts for exclusive for Facebook. extended sportscast that people that they can get it when they want. Like they may not be able to sit down at 6 and 10, but they will sit down on their phone, and I bet you they would watch an extended sportscast, because that's the other thing, Jay. When you tune into local sports, how much time do you guys have? 2 minutes? Is it 2 minutes? What was
it? It was 3. When I worked in Milwaukee, it was 2. That was the mid '80s. It was 2 minutes.
Oh wow!
Typically.
So is it still the same? Because it feels like less.
Well, again, here in Madison, it's 3-ish.
Okay.
On a Badger football Saturday, they'll expand it to 5 or 6 or something like that. Mm-hmm. But the funny thing is about the 2 minutes in Milwaukee, mm-hmm. You could still get your stuff in if you just knew how to fit all the stuff in the box. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you wanted more, but you could still accomplish a lot of what you could do. But it isn't very long, and the weather gets 8 hits a half hour, and I severe weather coverage is very important. But boy, the weather rules, and it has for a long time and continues to. Because if the weather guy goes long, guess where the time comes up?
The sports guy.
The sports guy, yeah, that's been forever.
What I find funny about the weather, and it gets back to what you're saying, is like not everybody has a chance to watch the 6 or 10, but I always see, no disrespect to any of my weather weathermen that I know, but like they'll be like, looks like a hot weekend coming up. I'll have the details. And then I just go, hold on, look through my phone. I've got the details. I'm good. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you tease that weather, and I'm just like, well, hold on, give me 10 seconds and I'll open my app, and I don't have to wait. So I always thought that was weird. Like you're teasing something that everyone listening, or 90% of the people watching rather, could just find out in 10 seconds.
And part of that is that's the way it's been done for so long, mm-hmm. that it's just the way it's going to be done.
Yeah.
And but the stations that adapt to that, to the new way of doing things. Now, there was a big push for me to do more social media, and I'm not a big social media guy, mm-hmm. but I understand how you have to do it. But that takes time, that takes people, that takes effort. And to just add that on top of the regular stuff that you've been doing, you're not going to make anybody better. You're not going to make anybody better by adding that kind of stuff. What you need is a dedicated social media manager nowadays. And I know that may not be realistic, but if you have that third person to the team, I mean, that's a full-time job plus in itself, if you really want to make it elite, Yeah. But
yeah,
you
exactly.
Hire that person. You got to, and they wouldn't even. They probably wouldn't pay them the $20 an hour that you get delivering Ian's Pizza.
Right? I heard,
not even close.
No, we're not joking at all. Like you could make more money becoming a delivery driver at Ian's Pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot more than I make picking up range balls at Pleasantview.
But
it's okay. But I'm not asking for a raise. I'm fine.
No. But you get to just listen to music and drive in this restricted area, as opposed to listening to music and driving all over the city.
Yeah. And I don't work at night.
And you don't work at night. That's true. No one can hit the golf balls at night. They can't see them unless there's lights. Real quick, one last thing about television. I mean, obviously, political ads have always been a part of TV. Are there more political ads nowadays, or was this the thing when you first started where there was just constant bombardment of, oh my gosh, shut up, just let me vote?
There are many more political ads these days, and it's such a moneymaker for a local station. It's unbelievable, because what happens is if Joe's Hardware buys a 30-second spot, the political candidate comes in not really worrying about the price of the commercial, just they want to get their message on. Mm-hmm. They'll actually bump the Joe's Hardware ad for the next few months, because you can make so much more by running these political ads. And you'll see how they're lined up. And, candidate A stinks. He's awful. He's a criminal. Mm-hmm. Candidate B comes up and says the exact opposite in the next 30 seconds. And so there's this, it's just, well, I should vote for that guy. Oh, I should vote for that one. Well, and it's not going to stop until November 4th or whenever election day is. And then 2 years from now, it's going to be even more. And it's hard to find a non-political ad these days locally, because it's just an absolute windfall of revenue for the local station.
It is. And it's funny you just said that, like candidate A. I literally had this last night on whatever streaming service I was watching. Candidate A said candidate B is an idiot because of this, this, and this. And literally the next ad was candidate B saying, you might have heard ads talk about this, that, and that, but that ain't true. And I'm like, all right, someone's lying. I mean,
yeah. And not all of them come from the actual candidate's campaign. There's a lot of PACs and special interest groups that are putting out this stuff. And does anybody fact check anymore? I don't even know. I mean, again, that takes staff to fact check. So I don't know. I haven't seen much of it lately, I guess.
That's true. So Jay, when did you want to become a sportscaster? Is that something you always wanted to do growing up? Was there something else, or when did you make that choice?
Well, yes and no. When I was growing up, I was like everybody else. I wanted to play in the NBA, and well, the story goes that when I was in high school, they assigned me number 25, and I always thought, well, if you're number 23, you're Michael Jordan, right?
Yeah.
If you're 25, who is that? And I couldn't think of anybody that would be 25. So I didn't play all season. I went to the coach's office, and I said, Coach, why'd you give me number 25? Does it remind you of somebody? He says, no. That reminds me that we either have to be 25 points ahead or 25 points behind before it's safe to put you in the game. So at that point, I knew that the NBA career was probably not going to happen. But, and then I was the PA announcer at the football games in high school. And I was actually dating someone whose dad was the morning drive time guy in Wisconsin Rapids on a radio station. So that's how I got my first break. And I really wasn't going to go into it. And then my sophomore year in college, I finally said, I had everybody else telling me I was going to be an electrical engineer. I was going to be a chemical engineer. And so I was doing the mathematic route, which I thought was going to be the way I was going. But then one day I said, gosh, I want to do something I want to do. I think I could be good at it. And so I changed course and started more broadcast journalism. That's my major. That's my degree. And got an opportunity. My first opportunity was in television in Madison, which at the time was unheard of because you had to go through the farm system of starting in Rhinelander, then go to Wausau, then go to Madison. But I had a professor at the university, Jim Hoyt, who was friends with Marsh Shapiro, who owned the Nitty Gritty back in the day. And they would have lunch together, and Marsh needed a weekend sportscaster at Channel 27. Yeah. And Jim Hoyt says, hey, Marsh, I got a guy that probably would work for you. So I interviewed at the Nitty Gritty on a Monday. He called me back on Wednesday, offered me the job, and I was on the air that Saturday.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
1980. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing, because I was going to ask you, how many places did you work at before you got to Madison for 39 years, but straight to Madison.
Radio in Wisconsin Rapids, and then Madison. Then I went to Milwaukee for 3 years and then came back to Madison. That's where I've been ever since. Yeah, I was pretty lucky. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't happen very often, I guess that is. So what has been, if you had to pick maybe one or two, the favorite story or team that you got to cover in 39 years of a sportscaster? Well,
the most memorable moment to this day is the 1994 Rose Bowl. I mentioned that in the 70s, the 60s and 70s growing up, and really the 80s, most of the good part of the 80s. Badger football wasn't doing anything. I mean, they never went to bowl games. Well, in the 80s they did, but this was the first Rose Bowl in forever. Yep. And I remember standing on the sidelines of the Rose Bowl. The sun's going down over the horizon, and the hills are lit up, the mountains are lit up, and here comes the Wisconsin marching band coming out of the end zone for the first time that I've ever seen. And I just thought, man, this is really something. Then they go win the game, which was really remarkable. But that to me is the one moment that I'll always put at the top of that list. Badgers to the Final Four in basketball, remarkable.
Well, now, which year are we talking? Any year?
Anyone.
Okay.
Anyone. The 2000 one, that will long go down as one of the most boring games they've ever played against Michigan State, but it was still a cool experience. But I would say the Decker Kaminsky ones are
Okay.
the ones I'm talking about. Those were pretty remarkable. And personally, the greatest sports moment I ever had, our son was a part of a state championship team for the Middleton golf team in 2011.
Awesome.
And, you know, as a guy who, again, hung his hat on high school athletics, I had covered it, you know, secondhand, observing all along, but this was the first time I'd ever been a part of seeing the sequence of events on what it takes, the dedication, the teamwork, the ups and downs, and to have that work out personally. I mean, I always got so excited to see teams win state championships, but this one hit home. This was my wife and my, you know, pride and joy.
Yeah.
Being a part of a state championship team. And so that always has a special place for me too.
Is there a coach or athlete that you can remember that had the best sound bites that you knew, okay, I'm going to get something that we can put on the air most likely? And who is that person?
Michael Jordan. When I worked in Milwaukee, the Bulls would come to Milwaukee 3 times a year. And so, you know, I was kind of the Bucks reporter back then. You know, this was the Sidney Moncrief, Terry Cummings, that kind of era. And so Jordan would come, and he would give the most thoughtful answers. And I'm thinking, this guy's the biggest star in the world, and he still would do that. A couple other guys, Robin Yount.
Mm-hmm.
Robin Yount would talk to you when he was slumping, but when he was going well, he wouldn't want to talk to you.
Oh, so you only got Robin Yount when he was down, like in his downswing of his season.
Because I'm guessing it's because you don't mess with a streak.
Yeah.
And when you're on a roll, you don't do it. Paul Molitor was great back in the Brewer days. And you know, in all my experiences, and when you're in a position like mine, you know, you're kind of not the good guy, but you're in a spot where you're always trying to boost people up. You're trying to be the positive guy. And so I always had a good relationship with really all the coaches and players because they kind of knew I wasn't going to rip them all that much. Mm-hmm. So you develop a trust, and you knew, and part of that comes from my work with Big Ten Network, where, you know, I only talk to guys after they win. If as a post-game reporter at Big Ten Network, you only talk to the people that win. Mm-hmm. So they're always happy and they're always positive. But in all my years, if you would ask me how many jerks did you work with, did you interview, I can't think of a handful.
Well, that's good.
For whatever reason.
That's cool. I wasn't expecting Michael Jordan. I like that answer. I was expecting like Bo Ryan or something like that, but
Bo's pretty good because you could say,
sound bites are
Bo,
too long.
What do you think? Yeah,
it would take the whole forecast. You couldn't even use them.
They certainly are. It'd be one question that let's go back to the studio in Chicago. That'd be the Big Ten Network. But what impressed me about Jordan is that he was so. Everybody wanted to interview him. Everybody wanted something from Michael Jordan. And again, I had 3 exposures a year to him when he came to Milwaukee. And, you know, we talked to him after shoot around, for example. But I just kept thinking, this is the most wanted guy in sports journalism at the time. And he still gave golden stuff. You know, where you had to take Bo's thing and cut it up into 38 segments, Jordan would go, oh my gosh, he gave an 18-second answer, which is absolutely perfect. And he did that all the time.
Yeah. Man, he was great on the court, and he knew what he was doing off the court, man. It was perfect. Those 15-second sound bites, 15 to 20 or whatever. That's awesome.
And you know who else could do that was Jeff Sauer.
Really?
Jeff Sauer was Mr. 18-second soundbite.
Huh.
And I think he knew, but he was the other guy that talked like a TV person.
You know, I think they might. That's interesting. I wonder if they were thinking about that, like knowing that if I talk too long, I'm probably not going to get my point across. I wonder if those types of athletes like Jordan or a coach like Sauer kind of thought in the sense like, I have a message I want to convey, and I know the media has 15 seconds for it. I
Yeah.
wonder if they ever
Well,
thought like that.
I think that may have changed over the years because
Okay.
when I was covering the Bucks in the early '80s, I remember a lot of guys didn't want to talk to the media. So you have a shoot around in the morning. I remember Paul Pressey. Remember Paul Pressey, the point forward with the big long arms? Anyway, I was going to interview Paul Pressey. I'm walking right toward him with the microphone, and he sees me and turns around and walks the other way. Now, in today's world of sports marketing, the athletes would be more inclined to come up to you and say, "Hey, would you like an interview?" Because they want to be visible.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a change from, and I think there was more distrust by athletes back in the day because they were worried about they would say something that could be misconstrued or turned into something. And that can still happen today, of course, with social media. But I think with, we're in the world of NIL, we're in the world of sports marketing, and I think everybody wants to get on because it can be a benefit to them.
Yeah. Hey, when I got let go from my sports radio job about a year ago, or a little over a year ago, one thing that I noticed, Jay, when I watched sports again, it was a little, because I got fired in late July, and then I took the whole month of August off, and I was like, I'm not even looking at sports. I don't even know what sports is. I just wanted to get away from it as far away as I could. But one thing I've noticed now that when I watch games, it's a little bit more enjoyable. You can sit down, you can absorb the game, you can pay attention to it at whatever level you want. I guess it's almost as if sometimes the games are a little bit more enjoyable because I know I don't have to think about a storyline for every single game to talk about. Do you watch sports differently now that you're retired and you don't have to think about getting the sound bites and reporting on the story?
Absolutely. I've been to one sporting event in person. My wife had got tickets to the New Mexico State-Wisconsin football game a couple weeks ago. That's the first live actual sporting event I've been to since I walked away from local television. I watch on TV a lot. I'm very concerned about my fantasy football team, that's for sure. But yeah, I look at things very differently. I still enjoy doing play-by-play. I still enjoy keeping an eye on things, but I have I have a greater focus on taking care of my wife, my grandchildren. One other complication I probably could mention is that 3 months ago I had a heart attack and had 2 stents put in. And that kind of puts things in a little perspective too. Good news is I feel great. I feel better than I did before I had the heart attack. But as focused as you get while you're in the moment of covering things, and yes, you want to do a good job, and yes, you want to be well informed and all that sort of thing. As you say, once you take a bit of a step back from it, that kind of changes things and gives you that perspective.
Yeah, it's. And do you mind if I ask you about the heart attack?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's important. I think it's important to talk about it because I'm 64 years old. I'm in pretty good shape. I have a family history, and so that's the big red flag. But my symptoms were mild. I had a bit of a chest discomfort. I didn't have the big, oh, here's the big one kind of thing. In fact, the day I went into the hospital, I did play-by-play of the first 2 games of the state softball tournament at Goodman Diamond, and then got home and felt uncomfortable, went to urgent care. They sent me to the hospital. And so I start the day at Goodman Diamond. Later that day, I'm at UW Hospital about a block and a half away, getting treated for a heart attack.
Wow. Were you shocked when they said, like, what was your reaction, I guess, when they said, well, that was a heart attack?
You know what the weird thing was? Again, what drove me was that day, June 9th of this year, was the 40th anniversary of my dad dying of a heart attack. And so when I started having discomfort, that obviously was foremost in my mind.
Mhm.
And so that led me to go in. Otherwise, I was real close to not even doing anything about it. But when I was in there, and I talked to my wife about this too, I never considered how serious it could be. I always thought, oh, they'll maybe find something, they'll fix it, and everything will be fine, which is how it turned out to be. But I don't know if it's positive attitude and naivete or whatever, but it never scared me. All I could think of is, oh, let's find the problem and let's get it fixed. And fortunately, that's how it turned out.
Yeah. So they tell you that, and you weren't really thinking about how serious it could be. Um, did you then address like, okay, well, obviously some things in my life need to change, or was that
Mhm.
something that you did next? I'm sure that's probably for anybody who has that a heart condition like that. And what did you do and to do that?
Well, again, family history
Yeah.
appears to be the big driving force.
Okay.
Um, when you're in local TV sports, you run around all day, you eat a lot of fast food, you come home at night, you sit in front of the TV and grab a bag of chips and do that. Now, I was a little overweight, but not like big overweight. But I immediately went on the Mediterranean diet, which is more fish and poultry and fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
I've lost 18 pounds in the last 3 months. I do cardiac rehab, which is an hour of treadmill and exercise bike and rowing machine twice a week. I ride a bike 15 miles twice a week, and I feel as good as I have in 25 years.
Wow.
And what drove all that was my health, yes, but it was, I want to see my grandchildren graduate from high school.
Hmm.
My wife and I can't get her to retire yet, but she's close. And we want to tour. We want to go see the country and that sort of thing. And, you got to give yourself an opportunity. I, I don't know that I'm so dramatic that I say I have to live every moment to the fullest,
Hmm.
but there certainly is some of that. And, for devoting much of my life to a television career that took a lot of time and a lot of effort and took me a lot away from a lot of things that my kids were doing and accomplishing. Um, I guess the heart attack kind of went, well, let's make sure that doesn't happen again.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's, doing the right things to set you up so you can have that longevity and enjoy all the things that you just talked about is something I think people overlook, especially like, obviously you weren't, like you said, massively overweight and just feeding yourself poison food and everything like that. So you weren't at that extreme, but when I see people sometimes talk about like, well, like maybe they're smoking a cigarette. Well, I could die in a car crash tomorrow or not, or you
Well,
could live till you're 90. You know what I mean? So it's kind of that mindset that sometimes I think we have to have because we don't think about 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And there are several things you could do to ensure that if you do get to that spot 10, 15, 20 years down the road, that you're going to be in as best condition to handle anything that comes your
mhm.
way. And that's the thing I
Yeah,
think we sometimes overlook as people.
yeah. And again, I was very close to not going in to have it checked because it was discomfort. It was heaviness in the chest. And I could have easily said, nah, we'll worry about it later. I'll go back and do more softball games tomorrow. Well, um, I've got the pictures of what it looked like before while the blockage was still there and after they cleared it up. And it's like the before picture is like, it's called the Widowmaker,
Uh-huh. I've heard
the
of
the
that.
one
Yeah.
that was blocked. That's a cool term.
Right.
It looked like the belt line at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The
Okay.
first one, it was 90% blocked. Once they go a procedure where they take a catheter and they go up your arm
Yep.
and go into the heart and unblock it. And then the after picture is like the whole highway is clear. I
Wow.
mean, it's really remarkable when you see what they do. And I'll tell you what, the doctors and nurses, they were unbelievable. I mean, they know what's going to happen before it's going to happen because they've seen everything. And so I'm grateful to all of them. That's for sure.
I bet you, do you physically, like, aside from eating healthier and being more active, like, could you know, I would think that perhaps because of that Beltline analogy you gave, that now there's more blood flow. Like, did you instantly like feel better?
Yep. Well, I shouldn't say not right away. What happens when there's a blockage is that there's damage to the heart. Not only is the blood flow cut off, but the heart recedes or dies a little bit. And so we think that a section of my heart needed to be revived, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And when I first started doing these twice a week rehab things, boy, I was just gassed. And again, they told me that you'd have 2 or 3 really good days where you felt great, and then you'd feel like you got hit by a truck. And that's exactly what happened. And it was the process of rebuilding the heart muscle, basically, and getting stamina back and that sort of thing. So I didn't feel, I've had hip replacements. When I get a hip replacement, that's immediate relief. Boy, you feel great immediately. This is a little more complicated and took a little more time. But like I say, now I feel as good as I have in 25 years, and I have no physical restrictions of any kind. I got a load of 2.5 cubic yards of black dirt to put around our new driveway and seed it. And, that's 100 wheelbarrow fulls or probably something like that. And I did it in 2 days and I felt great.
Awesome.
Which, a year ago, probably not.
Right. So what would you say to someone who wants to avoid going through a procedure like that? I mean, obviously there's some preventative stuff. Obviously there's some family stuff that you can't control and things of that nature. But what do you say to someone who wants to avoid that? What can they start doing? What should they start doing?
Well, first and foremost, don't be a macho man. Don't be a tough guy. If you have family history, there's not much you can do about it. All 3 of my older brothers had some sort of heart incident, stents, something, stroke, when they were 63 or 64 years old. Well, I was 64, so it was my time. I mentioned my dad passing when he was 70 of a heart attack. So the good news is there's so many options available, and especially in Madison, there's so many great healthcare options. So take advantage of that. There's so much we know about these things that can prevent terrible outcomes. And yes, sometimes it happens. And yes, sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. But there's a lot of cases where you can do something about it. And think of your family. Don't just think of yourself. I mean, that's important too, but think of everybody else around you, and think of seeing a great sunny fall crisp day like today and go out and play golf. And don't give that up. And don't give up watching NFL games on Sundays. Don't give up hanging with your grandchildren, and because you have the power to do it. But just don't say, oh, I'll tough it out. I mean, the olden day, when you played football in the olden days, you didn't drink water because it was soft. You were being soft. Well, those days are over. We know better now. And so you have the power. Take care of it. And there's a lot of great healthcare available out there.
Awesome. Well said, Jay. Well said. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Next time I'm at Pleasant View, hopefully you'll be out on the range or something. So I'll try to hit a couple stingers at you.
I love it.
Yeah.
I will drive the cart to whatever yardage you want and park it there.
Okay.
And give you 10 free shots at it.
Ooh, 10? I could do it in 10. I can't even hit a stinger. I lied. I said I'd hit a stinger. I don't even know how to hit a stinger. But if you get it at close enough range, I think I could get you.
Okay. 30 yards, 10 shots.
Okay. I can do 30.
The balls are on me. So
okay.
Whenever you can make it out, let me know.
Okay. Sounds good. Jay, thank you so much for joining my podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the time.
All right, there you go. That is Jay Wilson on the John Cass podcast. That was fun. That was a fun conversation with Jay Wilson. So, a reminder to everybody: this podcast brought to you by me and Julio in Fitchburg off Fish Hatchery Road. Go check them out on Badger game days. They're open 7 days a week. Go check them out on Packers game days with drink specials. And every day, they've got a happy hour drink special as well. Tuesdays and Thursdays, $5 margaritas. And I will be giving away gift cards to me and Julio in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for how you can win those. Plus, I've got some college football tickets we're going to be giving away as well. Also brought to you by Ian's Pizza, $20 guaranteed rate for delivery drivers right now. Ian's Pizza, go check them out. They're always changing their slices. There's 3 locations in Madison. Perfect spot for a Badger game day, by the way. Ian's Pizza and JohnCastPodcast.com is a place to go sign up for my newsletter so you won't miss all the information on how to win these gift cards and or, sporting event tickets. So check out johncastpodcast.com, and a rate and review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen is so helpful. So if you want to do that, it takes like 10 seconds. What's wrong with you? You need 10 seconds to hit however many stars you want to give. I won't even tell you how many stars you have to give. I'll let you choose that. I would prefer 5, but hey, it's up to you. All right. We'll be back soon with another episode. Stay tuned. I will tell you how you can win a bunch of cool stuff coming up here on the John Cass podcast. Thanks for listening. See ya.